Hello, hello. Welcome to another Humpday
Hello.
Q&A.
Hey, Dash, you got to
It's
go
time
back
for
to your
dancing.
that music is
Right.
actually very up music. I really like it.
You
And
know,
I say this every week, but it's true. I'm sitting here dancing in my chair to that music pretty much every week. So I'm happy.
did you know, here's a fact for you. Did you know it was made specifically for our show by one of the Flutter
Wow.
GDEs, Maya
Wow.
or Jay? He actually did it himself, mastered it completely himself.
Cool.
So all for us. So,
Cool. We have good friends. Good friends of the
indeed,
show.
indeed.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
I guess we're going to
Hi,
get straight into
Simon.
it. Oh,
Hi,
yeah.
Simon.
Let's just get straight into this. So let's go.
Why not? What the heck?
Why not? Why not? Why not? So our special guest today is Danielle. She's going to be joining us in just a moment. First of all,
Sure.
do's and don'ts. Randall, take it away.
Oh, sure. So be nice. You see this every week, and it's for the same for everybody that's on the community networks. But yes, be nice. Don't post anything if it's adult. Come on. Don't advertise or promote anything. We're pretty heavy-handed on that in the chat moderation. Do not spam. We're also heavy-handed there. If you post your question twice, I take it out of the first part of the queue and put it in the last part of the queue. You're only hurting yourself. Do not post your questions twice. Do not spam. No harassment tolerated. We block you, and other people will block you too. We all talk to each other, as Scott likes to say every week. And also, just do have a good time. We're here to enjoy ourselves. We hope you're enjoying yourself, and hopefully, we'll all learn a little bit together. Awesome stuff. Is that about what Scott does there?
Yeah, that's about right.
Why Scott's not here? Why isn't Scott here?
Yeah. Let's quickly go through these and we'll do the introductions. So my name's Simon,
sure.
Flutter Community Leader, CTO of Dev Angels London. You can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Randall?
And I'm Randall Schwartz. I'm a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert, which means I spend a lot of time talking to people about Dart and Flutter and being enthusiastic about it because it's cool, especially getting cooler every day. It's part of what we're going to talk about today. I'm also the question magician, nice, wonderful title, which means I'm watching the live chat. We have a bunch of people in the live chat. If you put Q : in front of your question, it will go into my queue. Ooh, alliteration there. And we will answer that as a group. So that's how we work the show. So put a Q on it so I can put it in the queue.
And our guest today to help us answer these your questions is Danielle. Danielle, welcome to the stage. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, glad to be here again. It's always the highlight of every week. Sure. Hi, I'm Danielle Cox. I'm a Flutter developer. I run a team of Flutter developers at my job. I work at a company called Ardley. We're like a fintech startup, and I'm using Flutter Web actually. So that's kind of fun. It's a little bit different than a lot of people. And I also am one of the organizers of a group called the Flutteristas, which are for female and non-binary Flutter enthusiasts. And so if you qualify for that, hit me up somewhere. I'll get you the link to be able to do that. And so that's who I am.
Right. Well, let's. I think we'll get to the usual.
Why is Scott not here?
Scott's just not available today. He's just quite busy with other things, so he just couldn't make it.
Okay.
It happens.
The bigger question, Randall, is how come you have him on the list of who's here today?
I know. That's a complicated backstory that we don't need to cover.
How are we all looking forward to the upcoming event of the year for us?
Flutter Forward. Coming soon.
Coming soon. 25th
I'm greatly looking forward to it.
So
we're doing a show. We're doing a show immediately after it's over too. So we haven't made any plans yet.
We haven't. I was going to say we haven't kind of worked out the logistics of this because I think I'm going to be at the event, so it's like.
We might not have you on the live stream then. That'll be interesting. Okay,
we'll see. We'll see. It could be fun to do it live from the event. You never know. Right?
That would be cool. We've done that before for Flutter Vikings. So yeah.
And if you don't have Simon, you're not going to have me for sure.
Yes, because you'll be there as well, right? Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
Cool.
I'm going to say this now.
We have
Randall said that. Do you want to ask some questions?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Let's get some questions. We got questions coming in already. Let's see what buttons I got to press here. Hold on. I think I can do this. I push this one right here. Let's
Hang
see.
on.
So recommendations for an up-to-date tutorial and course for adding support to Flutter, Firestore, models, providers, things like that. Boy, I should know this. I haven't seen anything recent that has been show up in the YouTube chat. There might be some commercial stuff, might be some private stuff. But I don't think anybody has really caught up with everything quite yet. I mean, that's part of the problem with developing a course, which takes a lot of work, probably a lot more work than most people realize. And then to try to keep that up to date with what's happening. I mean, I was just looking at a book that had been published a mere 6 months ago, and already a lot of their code wouldn't pass lint. That's how bad this is advancing. So yeah, Simon.
I mean, I think no, I was just thinking about this, right? Like, I was just thinking about Andrea Bisotto's courses, and that I wonder if that came with this. But at the end of the day, it sounds to me like you've already got quite a good understanding of the pieces of what you actually need to be doing. That, you know, Flutter, using Firestore as your CRUD, using models with Firestore, and using provider to access those models. It sounds to me like you've already got a good fundamental idea of the pieces that you actually need. So I'm kind of curious, why do you want a tutorial course? Like, what is that extra piece of information that you want to get from that sort of material? Because at the end of the day, you put this request out there, and it's here on the chat. Other people that will actually make this content will watch this video, and they will make their content, right? Because it's desirable by the community. So yeah, I would like you to, if you want to elaborate more on what you actually specifically want to get out of this. Maybe,
and part of the problem is that people seem to come up with this specific laundry list. So they need a course that has all of these in it. Well, you know, all those pieces really operate somewhat independently. And so, yes, a great course that goes into detail on Firebase would be useful. A great course that goes deep into Riverpod is useful. But you don't need a Riverpod Firebase. The one I really like is Riverpod and routers. It's like, I get that there's some overlap, but it seems a little odd to me. So,
I think there's also, I mean, we've been talking about this in the past about tutorial content. I've heard this from quite a few people in the community, and that is, there seems to be a lot of beginner material, right? And that's because there's a lot of developers that come to Flutter from lots of different platforms, so they have different expectation of Flutter. And then there's also that sort of beginner material from people that have never even done programming before, right? And they want to learn Flutter. So there's a lot of beginner material in the sort of tutorials and courses and so on and so forth, information online. Then you have all this advanced stuff, which is all the people that have been around for Flutter for a long time, and they produce all this really heavy content. And I feel like we're saying that there's maybe a dip in the middle now for the intermediate. And I feel like this is what this is touching on, because you can know these sort of really basic premises of how you do these things, and you can know the really advanced, like how, let's say, Flutter works or how Firebase works or whatever else. But it's about bringing it together to build an application, right? That's that kind of like, that comes from experience. So I think walking someone through that or having a tutorial course on that is actually quite an interesting piece of content.
I can tell you, as someone who creates trainings as part of my living over the many decades I've been doing this, that part of the problem with the intermediate level course and trying to design it is, at the advanced end, people are used to seeing things for the first time that's weird. That you can throw things at them and they'll just go, oh yeah, that's kind of like this thing that I already know about, or I don't know anything about that, but I can quickly find out. They're all used to that. And at the basic end, you're used to them not knowing anything. So you spend time talking about every parts of it. But in the middle, you're not sure what basics they already have. So you don't know what you can start the course with. And identifying that starting point is, having all tutorials are ultimately taking somebody from a place to a place. And the closer you can identify the from places and the to places to what your audience actually is and then wants, the better it'll be. And it's tricky stuff creating those intermediate courses, particularly because of that. There.
All right. I hope that
we actually have a follow up on that, where Billy says, got the stock tech stack figured out, but knowing which Riverpod classes are best used for Firestore CRUD or where I fall short.
No. Oh, sorry. I just had that up. Hang on. Don't click on anything.
What?
Don't click on anything. But knowing which Riverpod classes are best to which Riverpod classes are best to use for Firestore CRUD is where I fall short. So I think I'd suggest you. I think Randall's got more of a handle on Riverpod than I do, but from what I understand, you've got the stream provider, right? Which you could use for your snapshots. The thing is, and I tell you what, I personally do even with Firestore, it doesn't matter what product it's external to your application. So the first thing I would say is put your entire access to Firestore. Like, let's say you have update user, right? Now you can update the user's profile by just writing a document to the Firestore, but that is technically how it gets stored. It's not the action that's in your app. So it shouldn't be like on the profile page of your app. You don't put the I'm going to update Firestore document inside that, right? What you do is you would have a user repository or user service or whatever you want to call it, user manager, right? Something in the background which is completely isolated from the UI. And now what happens is to connect up that backend user manager with your UI, you use Riverpod. And that solves that connection. Now, what's interesting about this is you can then have a stream in that backend that you can use. I suggest RxDart, personally what I use, and that would be like a behavior subject or a publish subject, and you can actually have that like output events, and then your UI can react to those events or state changes or whatever it is. So, for example, the current user. So, in the case where the user logs in, it changes the stream, and then your UI can rebuild itself based on the fact that the user just logged in or logged out, and so on. And I think that's I'm feeling that's the kind of bit that's missing here. It's like I get you're saying which Riverpod classes, but that's just the usual ones, like stream provider to use a stream or a future one if you're using a future in your backend. Or state provider.
So the big thing that happened in Riverpod 2 was the unification of all the different kinds of providers into essentially now notifier and notifier provider and the companion async notifier and async notifier provider. Everything can be done with those two things now. Everything. And those are the ones that are wired up because of the way the generator stuff works. And the generator stuff is amazing. If you haven't seen that yet, get into that. I'll post the links to Andrea's discussion of that. But those are amazing. The only one that doesn't map well from what I call the legacy providers over to the modern providers is a stream provider. You can do a stream with an async notifier provider pair, but it's not a really solid fit. It's not like having the old stream providers. So in my go-to bag, I've got the 4 new key ones, the brand new ones, and then I've got stream provider. And that's all. Ignore state notifier, ignore the other ones. You don't need all those. You don't need all those at all anymore. There's nothing you're benefiting from using any of those anymore. Those are still there for legacy. Yes, they still work. Yes, they have some of the new features, but the big core ones, notifier, async notifier, notifier provider, async notifier provider, are really where you want to be looking to develop all of your stuff with Riverpod.
All right. Hope that helps. And we did actually mention this, but before we get into it, if you have any questions and you want to ask them to us or any of our guests, put them with the Q prefix in them. Otherwise, we think you're talking between yourselves in the chat. So,
yep.
For us.
Cool.
All right.
Scroll. Hold on. There we go. Let's do this. How about that one?
How can I handle?
Go ahead.
Go on.
How can I handle hit testing for widgets which are outside the borders of a stack with clipping set to none?
You can't.
We'll let Simon handle this.
So by default, hit testing is carried into the bounds of the parent, and it only passes down to the child if it passes its hit testing. So basically, if you the way it works is that we tap on the screen, hit test on the parent widget, and it slowly makes that rectangle smaller until it can't hit test on any more children in that leaf node, and therefore there's nothing to be tapped on, right? So it'll traverse down the tree like that, based on the rectangle portion that covers that point that they tapped. So the way you deal with this problem is that you put something outside of your UI. So what you can do is, and again, I don't quite understand what you're actually trying to achieve here, so it might be good. We get these questions quite a lot. You're asking for a specific answer how you do this thing, but you're not telling us what you're actually trying to achieve. So first of all, I think, tell us what you're trying to achieve. I'm trying to drag an icon across between two different widgets, right? There's other solutions to that than answering this question, for example, right? Anyway, but to do this thing, if you want to hit test outside the bounds of your widget, you're actually hit testing on a parent widget. So what you do is you just wrap your entire app in another widget that you have your smaller widget communicate with using whatever you want, ancestors, state of type, or provider, or whatever. And all you're doing is you're saying when you tap outside, the parent widget handles that, and then it can pass it down to the child in some relationship that you want to manage. But there's no direct, simple answer to that question because it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Hopefully that helps. Anything else?
Hopefully, yeah. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me push the next button here. Where's the next button? How about this button? Please give me some advice on using Flutter for web. I think I know who I'm going to turn this over to. Trying to build web using Flutter, but it's very laggy and not as smooth as the mobile app. Danielle?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I presume we're talking with animations and stuff, not necessarily starting up or whatever. But if we're talking about that, I've noticed some things like that, and I don't do all of the same animations I would do on a mobile app when I'm using with web. Because of that. So I'm trying to think of what advice I can give. What I've noticed, for example, adding when you navigate between routes, the animation that happens by default often looks kind of weird to me on a web page. It looks kind of off.
The material one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the normal. Yeah.
Yeah, I instantly change it to a no transition or a fade or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's weird it's not just weird because of the you don't expect it. It's weird also just to me, the timing of it just feels weird, the way it happens. So but that said, I've done some other, I played around. Simon had done a floating carousel before, where it was a 3D kind of going with an angle and stuff like that. And I played around with that with pictures, and the animation itself is very smooth. It gets a little bit pixelated on me when I try to do it with actual real pictures. Photographs doing it, it kind of gets a little bit weird at times on it, but the actual animation itself is very smooth. So I guess I'm curious.
Now I was just going to quickly say, to solve that, Danielle, you can set the filter quality on the paint that's being used to high. Should solve the pixelation.
I'll try that. I appreciate that because I've been playing around with that because I'm a photographer and I've been working on how I want to try to make a website that has my photography on it, which has other web related issues too. Because
there's probably some better ways of actually doing it now. I think about it because the way it works is it paints the images at a medium size and then scales them down up depending on where they are. But actually, you could actually paint them larger and actually change the size. There's other ways of achieving it now that I know more. That was a long time ago I did that.
Yeah, it was a really cool effect though, and it's some neat math. That's one of the things that's always fun. But back to the specific question here, I guess I'm curious as to what exactly is being laggy because a lot of, I do simple animations in the apps I do because it's really just a business form. So there's not opportunities to do massive amounts of 3D gaming kind of stuff. But other than transitions, I've not really seen it be too laggy. So I guess I am curious to know what you're seeing.
I think it's. I was going to say. I would also say that I've actually seen some really high performing Flutter web stuff. Not a problem. But I think there might be a case that you're doing too much. So it could just be that generally you're trying to rebuild everything in your entire UI stack, which is going to cause some issues, right? So because if you try and do that on multiple frames, suddenly, you're doing too much. But that's just you would have that same problem. It might be hidden on mobile because the mobile has a lot more power and it has it's a different platform, should we say. Mm-hmm. I would go back and just look at the general Flutter performance tooling that's actually available and see what you can do. Also, just try it on the desktop environment, not the web environment, and see how it behaves, right? Because you might be able to get performance I think you can do I don't think you do performance profiling on web yet. I'm not sure actually, but you definitely can do it on desktop. So you could try that as your first point of call. I was going to say, like, the other one is just I also suggest you check into repaint boundary. There might be some places where you can put a prodigious repaint boundary, and that might also solve your laggy problem. But yeah, without any specific knowledge about what you're trying to do, it's quite difficult. I'll give you a quick example of this is a direct example of where people go wrong with Flutter. So let's say I want to fade something in and out of my screen. I can wrap my widget with an opacity widget and give it a number. Let's say 50%, 0.5. Okay. Now I can now change that number with an animation control. Now it animates and it fades the entire screen in and out. But what you've done is you've wrapped a widget, which is not the same in the compositing system as using a fade transition or an animated opacity. These widgets use a different way of compositing alpha, which is more performant for that type of animation. So in that case, you're better off using those to animate an opacity rather than using an opacity widget and animating it. So there's a slight difference there. So for example, I'm implementing custom animation with a switching tab bar using animated positioned widget, and it's laggy on web, but very smooth on mobile. So again, it could be simply as you're doing a rebuild, which is rebuilding the entire bottom nav bar to change the animated position widget. First of all, that's probably one thing. So there's many ways of actually changing that, but you can actually we can maybe look at this a bit later, but you can actually extract out your animated position into its own, the way you handle the animated position into its own widget, and therefore you don't actually rebuild your UI. I think there's also what could be happening here is you're trying to update and animate the positioned every 60 seconds. Honestly, just wrap your stack in a repaint boundary and see what performance difference you get. You might find, but because there's stuff underneath, it's repainting everything, which doesn't need to. Try it, see what happens. Simple solution.
And before we go to the next question, I just want to say, for those watching the live stream, I'm in an underground bunker, and there's a tiny 0.5 meter by 2 meter window. The sun perfectly lines up during this show. Looking right in my face. So I'm
this time of year, it's always going to get sun in your face.
Yeah, right. Well, and most time Oregon, where I live, it's clouds. But it happens to be sunny today. It was cloudy and rainy yesterday. Why couldn't that be today? Anyway, we'll continue. Hold on here. Let's go with this one. How do you use the Flutter overlay to display search queries from the API? I'm not sure how to properly update the overlay state. Simon?
I think we could probably do a little play around with this in a minute and do some live coding perhaps, because it's hard to describe these things. But yeah, you basically you do overlay.of, and what you get back from that is an overlay state, and then you can say insert, and then that inserts a overlay entry onto the UI. Overlay entry has a builder which returns a widget. You can just update that widget whenever you want. So there's plenty of ways of doing that. You don't I think it's all about how you bring these things together. So for example, let's say the keyboard comes up and you navigate and your screen squishes up and you want to not take up that much room on the screen for whatever the overlay content is. You need to handle that yourself. There's a couple of ways of doing that, but anyway, I'm perhaps you can update the overlay state is a bit vague, so perhaps you can give me an example of what you're trying to do. I mean, again, like let's say you had this is search queries, so you got suggestions. I mean, that suggestion list can just be from a stream builder, right? So that as you type it, updates. I don't think there's anything to do with the overlay specifically. These are just more widgets. Let's see.
We can hang on to that as a live coding if you want to do that towards the end. We were looking for something to do for live coding, so this is great. Cool. All right, let's go to the next one then, unless you have anything else, Simon. Here is Build Runner the future? I've been avoiding it, using it for JSON equality, whatever. Just create those functions myself. You're going to be pleasantly surprised with what's in store for Flutter 3. We're going to see more of that, not less.
Yeah. Well, so Build Run itself. So let me give everyone a quick lowdown of what you actually happens. So Build Runner, when it runs, it actually produces files in Dart tool directory, dart_tool directory inside your project. Those use the AST and the other packages to analyze Dart code and produce output. So the problem is, each time you want to rebuild that to maybe, let's say you change something in your code and it rebuilds, it has to rebuild all that Dart code, rerun all that Dart code. And it's quite a lengthy process. And once you start adding multiple code generators to your code base, it kind of gets a bit slow. And it's not the fastest processes anyway. That's why there's preference to use watch when you're developing an app, because it means that it's running in memory all the time and it's a little bit quicker. However, in the future, we've got this is nothing new. This has been known. This is what's it called? Static metaprogramming. And the idea being that you can type something in your code and it instantly changes within your code. This is nothing that's new. This is actually there's been a couple of projects I've seen recently that use this. I think the Analyzer package has there's like Analyzer plugin, and there's actually documentation, I think, for yourself. Let me just see if I can find it.
Yeah.
There's an Analyzer plugin API, and for life of me, I can't find it right now. Anyway, and what it allows you, it's called Analyzer _plugin is the package, but there's looks like there's a discussion group, an issue tracker, and things like. But the idea being that that's the sort of future where things hook into the analyzer, so when the analyzer triggers, it then does it. So it's running in memory as part of the actual analysis server, as far as I understand it. I may be wrong with the finer details there, but the point here is that it doesn't become a long running process. But there's no reason why you should not be using code generation.
Yeah, it's set up pretty well. I was afraid of it until I found a couple of good Visual Studio Code plugins, and I'm sure they're the same thing for Android Studio and IntelliJ and other whatever you're using for your IDE, that can go into a project and figure out that you have these 3 Build Runner necessary files and provide an IDE interface for those to either run the watch or just run the one-time directly from your IDE. So it is a lot simpler now than it was a year ago. The reason you should get used to this kind of technology is that, again, coming up in Flutter in the near term, because they're working on it soon, I don't think it's fully specified yet, there will be effectively the same way to do things, but as Simon said, actually part of the analyzer. The impact on this is that there won't be this separate running phase. There won't be these files that are hanging out trying to either be committed or avoided in your Git repo. There'll just be changes in the memory structure that the compiler has about your code, and it will be able to do most of the things that we're doing right now with Build Runner. So I look forward to that. Coming soon.
The one thing I'll say random on is I always had the hardest time remembering that command that you have to run with.
Yeah.
And what I finally got it with is it's run, build, run, build.
Okay.
Do you know what I've done to solve this? I put an icon in my IDE. I just edited the toolbar, added a thing, and it runs that command for my current project. So I just
that's cool. Yeah, but I finally realized it's run, build, runner, build. So it's run, build, build.
Run,
if anyone
builder, run.
If anyone wants to explore static metaprogramming and the current design specifications for that, they're actually a work in progress right now. I'm posting the various links in the chat for anyone that wants to go look at them.
Cool. All right, let's keep moving on. We got a lot of questions already, so let's keep moving on. Let me push the button here. All right. Do you have any suggestions for a flame game folder structure? I wonder if this is related to the current 17 Days of Flutter coming up right now, right?
Yeah,
Simon?
maybe. I mean, do I have any suggestions? I mean, I have to be honest here. I've never made a game in Flame, so I don't really have an example. I actually watched Luke Pighetti build his stuff on his stream.
Okay.
Before Christmas, but I think the answer is not particularly. But I think that the point here is that it's all about, again, like this is like feels very much like the question we get about when you're writing apps. And when you're writing apps, it's like, do you structure things based on feature or by type? So it's like, do I have all my views in the views folder? Do I have all my managers in the managed folder? Do I have all my models in the models folder? Right. So then you might have like, I don't know, a user model, a user manager, and a user, whatever I said first of all, right? So and sure, you can do it like that. Or the other one is you make a user feature folder, which has got all your feature for the user, and that has user manager, user model, and everything in it. Or you do a mix of the two. So, I mean, it's the same here. Like, you know, you might have game objects, you might have enemies, you might have pickups, you might have, you know, managers, logic, sound stuff, who knows what. And really, it's about, if it, put it this way, if you're working in a code and it doesn't feel right and it doesn't work for you, change the structure. The problem here is people get married to their code and they're not happy. They don't want to change it. Change your code, refactor.
Refactoring is
time.
Yeah.
Never like you learn so much just by refactoring your code. And if you're using a Git repository, it's checked in. You can't break it. If it breaks, you know, revert back to your previous thing that you committed, right? You know,
Right.
As you do each bit of the refactoring, commit it, and then you can always go back 5 commits if you want to. And you know, you've got those options about, you know, you can't break anything. So
Force push is called, wants to talk to you.
Any idea, anything, Danielle, on this?
Sure. I mean, I you know, if you're just writing your own game and it's pretty simple, then it doesn't really matter at this point. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to try out both ways, you know, to do it by feature or by function. I mean, it's a great way to try it out. I've come around. I mean, you know, when I started, it was like everybody else. I was coding by feature, and now that I've done more by function, it's not even always necessarily the first way I think about. But I definitely enjoy that a lot better. So I would definitely be doing it that way. So like, you know, if you're introducing a new type of monster in your game, I'd like to see that all of the code about that monster kind of together, so that maybe it's working. You know, so if one person's working on it, you know, they're not messing with everybody else, and where you go with it is a lot easier. But that said, with modern IDEs, it's a lot easier to jump around wherever you have to now. You know, so you're not tied to having to go find it. So finding it's no longer really the answer. But I think that in, you know, object-oriented kind of coding, I think it also makes sense to have this stuff tighter together, so that you're dealing with, you know, the things that related together. That's my opinion.
I have to be honest with you. I'm just thinking about the last project I made, and like I would have, like, let's say I have a feature directory and I have some stuff to do with that feature. I might have a widgets directory and then have widgets for that feature that are only used in that feature, right? Mm-hmm. Then I might also have a global top-level widgets directory for widgets that are used across multiple features, let's say. Or the same thing for models, like have a global top-level models directory which contains models that are used across all features. So kind of like there's a hierarchy as well as a, yeah, it's a bit of both basically.
I was gonna say, are you really trying to say you want to do both?
Well, it is a mix of both, but there's no reason to do whatever you want.
Well,
like, wherever, like...
I mean, in all fairness, there are times where, you know, you don't have a feature that's there. It's like, you know, if we're talking still about games, right? You know, the stuff that the monsters do that's going to be common across all the types of monsters. There's certain parts that are going to be like that, and then there's certain parts of that that are going to be common across all of the things you can interact with. You know, the treasures and the, you know, whatever else you've got going on in there. So it, you know, we can say all day long, do it this way, but it's also at some point you've got to stop and think about, well, how do I make this, you know, fit what like Simon says, what feels right to you, you know, and that's one of the things I learned when I try stuff. You know, I love that with new projects and new things is I'll try something new and I'll love it and use it everywhere else, or I'll hate it and I won't ever use it again. And then refactoring is a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to say literally that just right there says like refactor, right? You do it one way, and if you're not happy with it, refactor it.
Yeah.
Keep changing it until you're happy with it. As long as you've got a structure that you can find. If you can't find things, then the whole point of a folder structure is not working for you. So you should change it, right? If you keep having trouble trying to navigate your folder structure, then it's wrong. So change it.
And that's one of the easiest refactors you can do.
Yeah,
it's interesting to think that this is a problem because we have a tree file system.
Yeah.
If we had a matrix file system, we could just stick things where they belong across and down both directions. But we have a tree because that's the way the guys at Bell Labs did it. That's how we ended up with this.
I was gonna say next should be telling us we need a graph database to store all our files.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's run with it. Let's go. Let's go with the
next question. Next
question, right. I can already answer this one. Can we do VS Code level coding on Flutter on Dartpad? No. But here's what I've done. I have these two little scripts. Will you let me finish?
Hold on.
You let me. Okay.
What is the question? VS Code level, as in like
all the things you get from an IDE. No, Dartpad's not that smart. It gets close with a few of the basics, but not everything. So here's what I've done. I have two scripts, one called dplay, one called fplay. And what they do is they go over to /temp, they create a temporary project, brand new project with either a randomized name based on a UUID or the name that I give, and then populates it with my favorite imports and everything, and then immediately opens up VS Code on that. So within about 10 seconds of having an idea, I can invoke dplay, and up comes a Dart project already ready to go. And I'll put a link to this to my what do they call that on GitHub? The gist. I'll put a link to the gist soon. But that's what I do, and it's almost as fast. Well, it's faster actually than opening up a browser window and going to Dartpad. So I get then the advantage of having a full editable file system. I can add whatever packages I want. I get the full power of VS Code. I think that's a better solution than playing with Dartpad. Dartpad's a great intermediate step, but you really ought to learn to use your IDE in a way that works for you. And I found that with my scripts. So yay. Simon, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm going to blow what you just said out the wall and say you don't even need to do anything like that because we now have zap.run.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
So zap.run is it here working in the browser. This is it's the VS Code. I think it was based on VS Code ID. I don't know if it still uses any of the code of that in your browser, and lets you build and run. You can literally, if you sign in, you can actually like client fork a project and use your fork directly in the browser and all that kind of stuff with GitHub. So you get all the, like if I want to look up the documentation, do the refactoring, you can do all that within here and it all works. You get all the usual example ID and everything else. So yeah.
Cool. All right.
Test
next.
apparently. Anyway.
Okay. My bottom nav bar rebuilds on navigation, obviously, but this cuts off the animation. Any way of fixing this without using index stack, page view, etc.
Yes.
Simon's got it. Go, Simon.
Your Material app widget has a function you can pass it called builder, and that returns a widget that sits outside of your navigator, and inside that you can put a column, and inside that you can obviously use expanded, put the child, and then at the bottom you can put your navigation bar, and all that UI remains when you navigate around your screen. There you go. That's how you do it. The builder parameter of Material app.
Nice.
Or I think there's a similar on Cupertino as well. I think there's also Cupertino actually has a Cupertino scaffold, which has like a page scaffold as well, which is slightly different for the more iOS-y kind of navigation.
All right, cool. Next thing. Next. Yes. This is a weird one.
I thought the answer was Dart.
I thought Dart is the scripting language. Yeah.
No, I think is this something? So a lot of people they build an app or a game and they want a scripting language embedded so they can at runtime change the behavior within their application or the game or something, right? So you can use JavaScript. There's actually a JS package on, I can't remember what it's called. There's actually a JavaScript runtime package. Obviously, it bloats your application in terms of you're adding another language, another parser, and various other things. For the life of me, I can't find it right now. But there is actually a JavaScript. Hang on, did I just find it? I think I just found it. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Hang on, can I share this? Let's find out.
Maybe.
Should probably share the window.
Maybe you can, but I certainly wouldn't be able to. I don't know which buttons to press yet.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. So yeah, Flutter _JS is the package, and yeah, this is a JavaScript engine to use with Flutter, and it means that you can like write JavaScript code and actually get the result in your application. So
cool.
Yeah, there you go. Look.
Up at the top, that mobile was crossed out, but I'm still seeing examples of it.
Because it's more than mobile now.
Oh, I see.
So now it supports Android, iOS, Windows, Linux, and Mac are all supported.
Got it. I see.
That's awesome.
And obviously, on web you can do this anyway. You just do like eval, right? So that's not even a problem. But yeah, it's down here. You'll see you can do like JavaScript evaluate, and then you get back your result. So that can obviously be helpful for JavaScript. I don't know if there's actually a Lua. I don't know if there's a Lua package.
Well, that'd be interesting.
Lua virtual.
Flutter Lua. Yeah, Flutter Lua right there.
14 months ago, 3 years ago, unlicensed.
Unlikely. Might be dead.
5.3. There you go. Stick your Lua scripting in and call it, and I guess you get your result. So that's another option.
I'll throw out another option as well, which you have to up your game a little bit. But I find that Petit Parser is pretty powerful and can help you build a DSL directly in your Dart program to do anything you want. Now, what Petit Parser does is it basically takes extended BNF and turns it into an executable object. And that object can have side effects of creating an AST or whatever you want to do, or just translate it into something else. It's very, very powerful. This guy, Lucas, has been building this thing for years. I remember it all the way back in the Smalltalk days.
So do I,
implemented in multiple languages. But imagine a regex on steroids. I mean, and that doesn't do it justice because a regex is awful. This stuff is actually very readable when you build a parser, and you can drop it in any place that you would have a regex to do matching and stuff like that. And so you can actually use it in place of complex regexes, which is also really handy. For example, the XML parser in the pub is actually written in Petit Parser. So that XML thing that you're using, some of you are using out there, is you're actually using Petit Parser code. The ASN1 parser is also written in Petit Parser. There's a few other users of that already in the packages and stuff. Yeah, so that XML package there, that's written using Petit Parser. See? So yeah, it's very cool. And the way that turned out actually is because Lucas kept getting notes from people. He had written it just as an example for a Petit Parser. And then people kept saying, why don't you just release this as a separate package? So he did. He basically just took his example and released it as a package. And that's how we have an XML parser in the pub. So that's pretty cool. So check it out. It's very powerful. Very handy.
Lots of packages use it. Toml,
a
lot of well-known packages, INTL generator expressions.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful, extremely extensible. It's only getting better all the time. He's done a lot of work recently to make it strongly typed all the way down through the bottom levels of parsing, which was difficult before. It has nice shortcut formats of using like or and to represent or and in your parse description. It's really, really slick. I would definitely check it out. Cool.
Right.
Anyway,
I'm going to say now, I want you to get your final questions in, because if we're going to do any live coding, we're going to need time. So, into live questions chat with you.
Cool. Thanks for pointing that out. And here we go with the next one. How can I execute a function every time a screen appears? Includes when the user presses the back button, returning the screen without using routes or push then. What do you think there, Simon?
Without using routes or push then. Okay, so first of all, to be clear, how you change the screens without routes? Because you can just change widgets, but like then you can do whatever you want. So I suspect you mean no custom routes. You just use the standard routes that are built in. So you use a navigation observer, navigator observer. I think it is navigator observer.
Right. I was just going to bring that up because I wrote something using that to do my HTML meta tag experiment, where I was going to help create SEO by adding meta tags to various pages, and that's exactly what I hooked into was the navigator observer class. I used one of those.
Yeah. So even Go Router actually has a parameter for navigation observers. Basically, you can see here there's one already built in route observer. I don't know, for a model, you can have a little fun example there. But basically, you get these functions being called when a route gets popped and one gets pushed. And then obviously the previous route you're on. So pop would be the one being removed versus the one that's now you're going to, and it's the other way around for push. If I remember right, I don't know. It gets a bit weird, but yeah, just run over these functions in your own class where you go.
And it's useful to build a skeleton first that just logs each one of those as they get called, and then start navigating around in your app and see what actually gets called. Because I had a hard time understanding exactly what the from page and the to page was in my routing. Sure. And it took me a little while to understand that. And
you know what? That there is a prime example of where the documentation is failing. So the variable names need to change the parameters, or there means more detailed documentation on those fields.
Yeah.
Because I always have a problem with that as well. So, I never even thought about it until just now. Like, I would just print it and then you go, okay, done and move on, So,
right. Or you put a hook in, and it doesn't do anything whenever you thought it should be doing it. And it's because it's calling one of the other hooks,
Or you just flip your conditions backwards. So you flip your condition and move on.
Yeah. Right.
Go on. All right.
Sorry. Next.
Hopefully that solves it.
There we go. Cool. Lottie files don't work properly on Flutter web. It works on the emulator, but doesn't work when deployed to live. Do you have any bad experience with Lottie for the web? Apparently you do.
I've never even tried Lottie on web. And frankly, you could just wrap the Lottie JS package anyway. Then I would just do that. So you can actually do what's called a conditional import. Basically where you put if there's like a if statement mixed in with your import lines at the top. I won't go into it. You can go look it up. But basically means you can say, okay, if I'm on web, go do this thing. And if I'm on any other platform, go do that thing, right? And in doing that change, it means you can use your Lottie, whatever Lottie package you want for your native code. And then you can just use the JS package, the JS code for web. And whatever way you just normally add it to your JavaScript, what's the other thing? Whatever way it describes on how to integrate your website is still what you would do with Dart. It's a little bit more funky in terms of, you might put your JS import, your script tag in your main index, and then in your Dart code, you need to either construct those objects using the names of the objects or create externalized classes using the @JS. It's actually the Dart.js package, which contains the @JS annotations, and it will automatically call the right things. But there's actually like a JS facade generator or something, Dart.js facade generator, which will take like TypeScript and generate Dart code for you. So maybe that helps. But I've never experienced Lottie on web myself, but I know it does have web support built in anyway. So why use a package written in Dart when it will work directly with JavaScript?
Cool. Let's move on. We've still got 9 questions. We want to get to some live coding. I don't understand this one. Can a class with a notifier is extended? Probably be extended.
Maybe extended, yeah.
Yeah. What does that mean? Of course, a class with a notifier can be extended.
I mean, you could extend any class.
Yeah. Almost any class, except sealed classes. But yeah.
We don't have them yet officially.
Well, the analyzer can tell you it's sealed. And the built-in ones can be sealed. They have hard controls for that stuff.
Oh, yeah. But that's different.
Okay. Anyway, well, I guess that was not a very exciting question. If you have a different question, ask it really quickly. But otherwise, no, we're moving on.
And the only thing I would add to that, by the way, is Effective Dart definitely talks about when you should not be extending classes. You know, if the class does not explicitly state that you can extend it, you should probably think twice. You know, if it's your class, you do whatever you want. But then you probably ought to put in the documentation, you know, that it's intended to be extended. But if you have a class that's not abstract, if it's a concrete class and it doesn't say that it should be extended, you should be careful extending it anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's one of the things I really, really appreciate about Dart, and that is that ability to treat any class as an interface, to be able to extend any class. It's so powerful. There's so many times that I've run into in my days of Java, you would run into a class that's got it's a final class. You can't do anything with this. Good luck.
Right.
Or methods that final you cannot override. You get into a situation where if I just did put that keyword in there, I could do what I want to do to work whatever the problem is I'm having. And it ends up meaning that I just pull in a bunch of code into the app, copy it essentially in, and change it in some fashion, and then, you know, ship that code because GPL or something like that. You know, like it's just ridiculous. And it's just like, just for those keywords. So I do agree, but however, like when we start getting, I think they're adding sealed classes, as far as I understand it, or eventually to Dart.
I also appreciate
not to overuse it to get into that same situation, right?
Right.
Like it's there for your own code, but don't just stick every class as sealed because you don't want anyone to extend it, because you just limit especially as an API library, you just limit your options.
Yeah.
Sure.
I really like that for testing, you can just say my mock class implements this class.
I do too. I was going to say that. Absolutely. That's where I was going to go off what Simon just said. It's that same thing, being able to implement it and then use it that way. And then, you know, able to mock everything you need to that way is amazing.
And you'll be notified if something doesn't get covered. So although, of course, with Mockito or Mocktail, it implements everything automatically. But no, it doesn't. Does it?
It does, yeah. And well, the way it works is that it those two classes, the mock base class implements no such method. No such method is a special function that basically gets called when it looks up a member or a function inside your class and it can't find it. Then it calls no such method with the invocation object, which describes the symbol that you're trying to call them, the member, the parameters, the name parameters, all that kind of stuff. And that's literally how Mocktail work. They get that function called, and then they look up in their list of registered handlers. Oh, does the member name match? Do the parameters match? Great, call that function and return the result.
Yep. All right, cool.
But implement would just complain if you didn't have it, right?
Yes, but the nice thing is that you could actually just do that yourself if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
It's very don't recommend it to anyone. It uses dynamic. It's very slow. It's not meant for that. Just FYI.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Is there any way to get the mounted property outside of that widget in business logic? And is it possible to create one for a stateless widget too?
Don't do that.
Right. It's possible and should are two different answers.
It is possible, but don't do it. So let me just be clear about this point. What you actually want to use is what's called a closure, right? You're passing a function from your front end that is in the scope of your widget, so it knows about the mounted property and pass that to your backend, right? This way, you're not putting your backend, the knowledge of your front end code, like your state objects and your widgets, in the backend code, right? What you're doing is you're passing a function from the front end to the backend, and when the backend's done whatever it needs to do, it can call that function, which essentially is calling it on the front end and has the scope of the front end state accessible to it. So that's how you should be handling it. But it's the same as like passing context.
What I'd like to kind of add here, though, is, I mean, that's the answer is don't do it. However, I'm presuming that he's got a real need, that he's got something he's trying to figure out how to do. And that,
Right.
without knowing what that is, I don't know how to answer how to work, how to actually do it the right way.
It's interesting. So mounted is a property of state, right? And the property of state is just to know, does it have a view root attached to it, or is it attached to the view root, if I remember rightly? So it basically means, is it attached to the UI tree? So it's basically saying, is my element, because the element tree manages the state and the widgets together, is my element attached? Great, then I'm mounted. That's essentially how it works. So the way you deal with this is you would send your state object back, so that if it gets removed from the UI, you just call it mounted property and detect if it's mounted. But now, as I said, you're now having your state on the back end. So the thing is, a lot of the time, people do this thing where they do asynchronous pieces of code, and then they want to like show a status at the end. Show a snack bar. Okay, if my widget's mounted, then I'm going to use the context, get the scaffold, and messenger, show snack bar. Great, your code, your profile was saved. Whatever, that kind of thing. And the answer to that is, don't do that. What you want to be doing is you have a front end widget that displays your statuses, right? That can listen to the back end state. Now that means your UI is reacting to the state of your application. And then in your back end of your application, you can emit events using right? So you can just have a stream that you emit a published subject, let's say, or however you want to do it. But you can just emit events saying user saved or whatever, And on the front end, when it gets it, it shows a snack bar, user saved, right? Now you've separated those two things. You can test the logic of your UI, you can test the logic of your back end. And you don't have to have a widget test to test the back end, and you're not it nicely separates the two pieces.
Agreed.
Cool.
But again, like I said,
sorry, I just quickly mention it also means that you can switch screens and use your application and still get notices of those things. It doesn't matter if the widget's mounted.
Now there is something coming up to answer the transparent part or the stateless part of this question. If you want mounted in a stateless widget, you can get to it in upcoming Flutters. Flutter 3.7, the one that's currently in development, has a context dot mounted property, which works even in stateless widgets. So there is a way to get that in stateless. I don't know why you want it, but you can test it.
There's also to mention that if you're in a stateless widget and you want to get if it's mounted, you just stick a builder. So there's a widget called builder, and you can do that as well. So there's state builder. Okay, state builder. All right, there's another one that you can do.
I just want to take a quick second here to promote the fact that I am going to be on Flutter Friday coming up in 2 more days. I'm the guest, especially celebrity guest. What Flutter Friday is it's a trivia contest live. You can win prizes. You can win money. I haven't yet, but it'll be a good challenge because I'll have to answer questions quickly to compete against you all. So it's going to be fun. I'll put the URL in the chat. Let's see here in the stream chat. But yeah, come see me on Friday. It'll be fun. A lot of fun. Sponsored by @sign, good friends of ours. And so we're talking about it here. Cool. All right. Let me go ahead with the next question. I think. By the
way, don't forget to mention that.
Sorry. Don't forget to mention what? Oh, yeah. Right. Thanks. I did.
He had said earlier to not let him forget that. So.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. When I save a transparent image in the PNG extension, transparent color went to black. Well, you didn't save it transparent then, did you? I don't know what to say. I mean, is this you're trying to save from Flutter? I wonder. Like, I'm assuming this is a Flutter and Dart related question because you're in your Photoshop or whatever. You hit save. I'm assuming that's not what you mean. That's because not a lot of images support alpha, and I suspect that alpha is getting dropped. So it could be that you normally get a color channel and you get an alpha channel, right? So there's actually 4 channels for every pixel. That's your red, green, blue, and alpha. And alpha, completely transparent pixels normally have a black color. So that's probably why that's happening. You're dropping your alpha in some fashion. I don't know how you're encoding it or what you're encoding it with. I do, however, recommend if your current, you can get the raw RGB bytes from anything inside of Flutter. You can then encode that with whatever you want. And there's actually a library called image on pub, which lets you encode it with as a bitmap, as a PNG, and that would probably solve your problem. You can take an ARGB and convert it to a PNG, basically. But I don't see any reason why whatever you're doing would cause that problem. It's hard to know because it depends on how you're trying to capture those images, how you're trying to capture those. Little point here, so just on the back of that, the widget that you're trying to capture, is it if it's not a repaint boundary, it's not got a layer. So it might be worth using repaint boundary to force a layer, and that will force a transparency, so that everything, all the widgets or all the stuff that's inside that will render to a transparent surface. If you don't do that, when you capture your canvas, you're essentially capturing on a black bitmap, which is probably what's happening, right? So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I also wanted to mention that my show coming up is on Friday the 13th. Not that I'm superstitious or anything, but that could mean all sorts of things. I have no idea why. Why would a guy whose internet handle is Merlin be worried about Friday the 13th? I don't know. Anyway, we've got more questions, Kira. Let me finish up some of these here.
I'm hoping Friday the 13th is the day I win the $1.3 billion here in the U.S.
Oh, that'll be cool. 1.3 billion. Wow.
Yeah, it's some $1 billion lottery now or something in America. I was like, it actually works out that even if everyone won that entered or something, you still get like $6.50 each. So that because the tickets are $2, it's always worth entering right now.
Yeah.
Well, except the fact that it's definitely skewed how it goes. So it's not, expected value doesn't really work in a lottery.
No, I know.
Yeah. It's crazy that
anyway,
way. I think this question's for me. Oh, go ahead.
Before we answer another question, I nearly forgot. Happy birthday, Danielle.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
It's your birthday today. So I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday on the stream. And I'm sure everyone on the stream is going to wish you a happy birthday as well. There you go.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your special day.
Yes. So, Randall Schwartz, I guess that's me, right? Could you share some of the extensions you use in VS Code as you revealed the build runner in question? Yes, I can. No, I don't have an easy way to share my entire extension list. I use a lot of the ones that get recommended by the larger lists I've seen of. If you're doing Flutter, use these extensions. I pretty much got my list from there. But I'm sure the build runner one was one of those. Maybe I'll publish a gist that has all of them in there, but I don't have any way of specifying just the Flutter ones in any easy way. There's no way in VS Code to have those coded a particular way. But yeah, I have about 15 or 20 extensions that are really, really handy for Flutter, and I should share those.
Here's the answer. Follow Randall on YouTube, and he can do a little screen share like video. Oh, here's all my little plugins. There you go, done. Little short video. There you go, done.
I could do that. All right. Here's the next question, just to get past me now. I use Flutter native Splash to prevent loading time gap for web. It is not animated. Any ideas for animated splash screen for web? Yes, I know you can do that. I don't remember exactly how. I'm sure Simon knows.
I actually.
Oh no! Look at Danielle. Birthday girl.
Actually, hopefully there's a video coming out soon dealing with some part of this. So there's, in my case, on my web app, I actually have 2 gaps, and so they're dealt with differently. But right as of I think it was 3.3, the index.html now has it's very easy to throw in some sort of animation you want that comes up as soon as that loads. And so if you go to gallery.flutter, there's a great example on the page there of how it does a little bit of a breathing and then expands out at the end. And you can look at the index.html and it's exactly what you need to do in your code. You just have to replace it with the animation that you want to have. And so I presume that's the one you're talking about is the initial one.
I think it's that as well. There's actually a guide on the Flutter website, which is under the. I'll put the paste link. This actually describes what Danielle just spoke about, which is how the JavaScript works, what you need to modify, how all this stuff works in here, and then how you customize it, and all the information. And there's a display of progress indicator example here, and includes here you go. A more practical example is use the CSS animation used in initialized code from Flutter Gallery and text there. And this is the code.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I was just going to show that. Yeah, so where you went to is the perfect place to go. That's the better place. I was just going to show where it goes on there. So if you look there, what you've got is you've got the actual animation, and then you end up in the keyframes that do the animation, and then right before that load is where on line 240. Yeah, so this is the animation. So this you just have to find. You know, you can always, I guess, ask ChatGPT to give you one. But anyway, down here on 246, we've got that turns on the loading screen. And so in the case of the Flutter Gallery one, it changes twice. And then after it's done loading, then it goes ahead and sets a timeout so that you can have the zoom so that they can see that. And then it turns off the animation with that. And that's all just straight up, you know, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, however you're doing it. And you can look at that. You can look at it, the source code here, or you can just go to the gallery page and view source, and that's where it is. So that one's one I actually know very well, and hopefully you'll know why shortly.
Cool. All right, on to the next one. We've got just a few left, so we're gonna get through these real quick so Simon can start typing funny again. All right, why is Flutter Web HTML build have blurred text, but Canvas Kit build looks sharp? I'm trying to avoid problems with network images on Canvas Kit. I'm using custom fonts loaded in the assets. Danielle, you want to take that? Or Simon already?
I know exactly what's going wrong.
Simon then. We'll give it to
Simon.
Sorry.
There have been issues posted on this, but go ahead, Simon.
So the thing is, right, so your browser actually does its own set of scaling. So I don't know if you noticed this, but you make an image at 640, let's say 640 by 480 pixels. It's not this big on your 4K screen. No, it's actually this big, right? It uses density independent pixels just the way it would do on a mobile. This means the Flutter Web needs to know what scale your image is at. So when you actually load your image, you'll notice that on the image widget and when you define assets, you can actually define a scale parameter. If you put scale 2, it will know that it's the original size and it won't be blown up and blurred, basically. The reason why Canvas Kit is doing, the reason why that's not a problem with Canvas Kit is because the Flutter text over complete rendering and it does all the scaling itself. So it doesn't have to rely on the browser at all. So basically it's the browser scaling, jumping in there and doing some fun stuff with your images. With text, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So
cool. All right. Well, that's that one.
You can fix it. As I said, I believe the scale, when you set the scale on your image widget, it should solve that, if I remember rightly. But if it doesn't, definitely look up the scaling stuff. There's a few different ways of probably fixing it.
Okay. Is there a way to receive two different gestures or clicks from one click? I mean, one detector on top of another?
There are ways, and the ways are and probably not what you want.
Does this involve the arena? I love the arena.
It does. The gesture
arena,
where gestures battle it out underneath a Flutter. I do like the name, gesture arena, right? I'm trying to remember. Me and Nash did an article on this a long time ago, probably 2018. So it might be actually, 2019. I don't know, a long time ago. Yes. So basically, you can actually extend and make your own gestures. So you can extend the tap gesture, and what you do is instead of that tap get accepted, it can still call its callback, but not accept the gesture. And this way, you've made a tap gesture that will still click because it does the hit testing. However, also does not take the gesture. and you can do that on 2 widgets. Now 2 widgets get their tap gestures, tap functions getting called, but don't actually accept the gesture, so it passes through the tree. There's also when you build a gesture, I need to remember this because it's I don't remember the exact details, but I'm going to tell you to go look at behavior parameter on gesture detector and raw gesture detector. If you're using raw gestures, that's if you're doing the custom ones yourself, like I just said, use raw gesture detector widget. But there's a behavior parameter that allows you to do transparent drop through and child first, and there's a bunch of different ways of resolving which thing gets the gesture. And I can't remember if the transparent one means that you get it, but it also carries through. But I think if I remember right, always one gesture has to win the gesture arena. So that's why you have to do custom gestures to basically
there can be only
that.
one. There can be only one.
There can be only one.
What you said just a moment ago, reminds me of that Seinfeld line. You know how to take the reservation. You don't know how to hold the reservation.
Yeah. It's a key part of it. Absolutely. That was my first episode of Seinfeld ever to see, by the way. Was the one
really? That's such a great one. That's such a wonderful one.
I'm kind of curious. Is this kind of like an American thing that everyone compares, like when they first saw Seinfeld or something?
Yeah.
Thing here,
it's cultural.
So I don't know.
Very cultural. Yeah. I'm sure you have programs that are the same way.
But definitely, Seinfeld is a definite American thing, and we know, all sorts of things.
All the lines. Yes.
Yeah.
We're all very good at that.
Yeah.
We celebrate Festivus. Come on. We celebrate Festivus.
Right.
All right. Enough of that. Here we go. Let's on to the next one. How to make a clickable link or downloadable file from an HTML widget. That's probably a web view. I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, if it's talking about like how to put a clickable link on your screen somewhere,
that's easy.
I use that with it. Yeah, it's a type of span that I usually put in with that if it's part of more text than just the link itself. But yeah, there's ways to do that. So I guess I'm not sure exactly what it's asking.
If you want to navigate the page in Flutter Web, you can just set what's called the location href of the page. So it would be window.location.href, and window is from the HTML package. And you just set that to a new URL, and it will just navigate the page. And that should download if the web server returns back the content deposition header. It will, as the correct thing, it will download. It will show the download to the user. I think there's a way of actually doing a download in browser in JavaScript, but that's again JavaScript magic, and you can just call that if you want to. Like you've got the Dart HTML package and JS packages available to you. Click a link and down or down. How to make clickable link or downloadable file from HTML widget. Perhaps you can expand upon that a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'm thinking though this is a problem when you have a web view and you want to inject some JavaScript into it, but you want it to then have a clickable link that actually comes back external, which really you're in a sandbox when you're in a web view. So you really can't do much. That's pretty much the way it works. So I don't know. Anyway, expand next time.
You can, just to be clear, the JS package has allow interop as a global function, which allows you to pass a Dart function to JS, and the JS can call that function. So that might be a way of you passing a Dart function to your HTML widget. I'm assuming you've got some HTML embedded widget. And then so when someone taps on something, it runs that function that runs your Dart code, and then your Dart code can do whatever it wants to do to download a file or navigate the page or something.
And I'm about to click on the last question for this week, but please, if you didn't get your questions in, come back in 167 hours when we do our next week's show and get there earlier and ask the question earlier. This is not really a question directly, but I liked it and just want to address this for a moment. Simon, you want to read it?
With 1.5 year experience, it's hard to find a good company. Job description require native Android and iOS with Flutter. How to find good organization.
Yeah.
With 1.5 years of experience, I mean, the thing is, I'd say this is, and honestly, this is the same with any company, right? You want to work in Flutter, yes. I think at 1.5 years, it's not an awful lot in the development. I don't know. I'm assuming you're saying because you don't know Android and iOS, you've not done a lot of programming before, or did you come from web? Did you maybe a bit of background? How long have you been programming in general for? Because the thing is, at 1.5 years of experience, you're considered quite junior. You may not be junior in Flutter, but that's the fact of the matter, right?
Yeah.
The job descriptions require native Android and iOS. I would just suggest you go learn some native Android and iOS. How to find a good organization? Keep trying. I mean,
yeah,
as much as I know this sounds silly, but as much as like an organization chooses you, you choose the organization as well. So if you don't find their practices or the way they're doing stuff good, then move to a different company until you find the one that suits for you. The end of the day, I mean, I spoke about this just before the call about sort of the job market in Flutter. So we know that I think last week we spoke about this flutterjobs.info, which Natalie Masupa shut that down because LinkedIn has got so many Flutter jobs now. It kind of defeats the purpose of the website because it was there because that wasn't a thing back in the day. I think the problem here is that Flutter developer sphere is growing rapidly, and it has been growing like exponentially almost. And with it growing so big, there also needs to be a job market that grows so big and exponentially. It doesn't, and job market doesn't grow that way, right? It's going to take time for businesses to start using the technology. So it's really down to us, the community, and that if you're working in a company that doesn't use Flutter and you think they should be using Flutter, to be that voice, the Flutter voice in the company, and to say, oh, look, give me a couple of days and I'm going to rewrite a section of our app in Flutter, and look how quick I can do this, and look how easy it is to do all this kind of stuff and maintain it and be that voice and show the technology off, and maybe that solves your problem. And that could be for a desktop app, that could be for web, it could be for all sorts. It doesn't have to be, it's anything that Flutter supports, right?
And the other thing you can say to a question like that is, welcome to the real world. This is what everybody faces every year of their career. They just have different skill levels and different things they can apply. So learn to sell yourself. That's very important.
And there's also the problem that companies are looking for people, and they're trying to find good people too. So, we definitely need to figure out how to get people properly connected at the right levels and stuff. But
yeah, cool.
There's definitely I think a lot of startups want people that are almost polyglots in programming, right? Like they just want to say, here, fix this, solve it for me, right? That's what a lot of startups want. So at the end of the day is showing a willingness to learn and your skill and aptitude to learn is actually quite important. You can say, oh, you know what? I don't know Android right now, but you know what? If you've still got the position open in a month, come back to me because I reckon I can have a lot of it down by that time, or something like that. You can do all this kind of stuff, and then just hard at it for a month, learning Android and knowing the details, and before you know it, you'll have all the basics down, and you'll sort of start going for it, right? But yeah, at the end of the day is if you don't fit the job description, then they're not going to offer you the job. Same goes both ways.
Just be wary of job postings that are looking for, we just saw this yesterday, looking for 6+ years of Flutter experience. I'm sorry, Sky wasn't even around 6 years ago, the predecessor of Flutter.
You're giving away trivia answers.
What? Maybe.
I think it's really funny actually that you get what was it? You get those job postings that are like, oh, I want like 10 years of Android, 10 years of Flutter, 10 years of iOS. I'm like, but they need candidates that are less than 20 years old. It's like, I can't do all of that in that amount of time, right? Like, obviously age doesn't come into it, but you know what I mean? It's that kind of like thing of like, there's no possibility of knowing all this stuff in this, list that they're asking for, right? So again, it's about the showing the aptitude and willingness to learn. Someone's Alexa this one up.
Not me.
Likes my British accent, apparently.
I think it was Scott. I think it was Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blame Scott.
Yeah,
Blame
right.
Scott.
Let's blame Scott. Yeah. I remember in the early days of the rollout of the interactive web and the commercial web, people were looking for people that knew Perl for 10 years. We're going, Perl has not been around for 10 years yet. You can't possibly have anybody except like us, the Larry Wall and me and a few others had been around it since Perl 1, but that was it. And so it's like, why are you looking for a 10-year veteran of Perl? It doesn't exist yet. Yeah. Anyway, so I think we're done with the questions. Thank you. Come back next week if you want to get in early. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, we are going to do some live coding.
Live coding. And I'm going to go get a hat. I'll be right back.
Get some shades. Pretend you're the Terminator. That's the way we do it.
Yeah.
Right. So let's see if I can get this shared, and then we can then work out. I'm sure I'm going to have to go dig through and find the previous questions that were asked, and maybe we can. No, don't press that button. That's the wrong button. Let's see if we can do this share.
Because we had a good one. I just don't remember what it was.
Well, if you can find it, please let me know.
Was it the hit testing?
We could certainly play.
No, the overlay, Flutter overlay. The question was how to use Flutter overlay to display search queries from the API. I'm not sure how to properly update the overlay state. That's the question I think you mentioned.
All right, let's do that one. Let's play around with overlays. Overlays. Oh, there we go. So let's do void main and run out. And we'll play home. And we're really going to go basic on them. We don't need a lot to start something up. To do what we want for now. That's not doing it right. All right. So the material. Hello world, of course. And let's hit play, I guess. Oh, yeah. That would help. Let's do Windows. Let's debug it. Why not? Hello, everyone. Yay. Live coding. All right. Train of thought wants overlay. You've got overlay train of thought. Let's do that. All right. So hopefully. Let's see what we get. We don't need that. Building. We'll get there.
Well, that's happening. I just figured I'd say hi to Roa. I'm going to meet her in person in a little over a week. So we're going to hang out for a day in Istanbul. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
So here we have a hello world. Oh, I don't know if people can see that. Move down a bit. Right. So let's get something underway here. So what do we want to do? We want what the example was like suggestions, search suggestions, was it? All right. So let's put a column in. And in this column, in this house, we have a gingerbread house. We're going to have a text field. Let's do that for a second, and then put some around this. The debug panel. So now we have a search box. Let's give it some symmetrical padding here.
What theme are you using, Simon, for IntelliJ?
This is my own theme. So I've honed this theme over many years. So if someone's asking what theme this is, I'm sorry it's not available. I think
it's a Simon theme.
It's a Simon theme, yeah. This is the new theme. This is the new UI in where is it? File settings. If you go into appearance and behavior, you now have new UI. The latest versions, you can enable it. It's still beta, but this is what everyone's using, which gives you this bar, and it's like a big. Obviously, I've sized everything up. It's not normally this big and bold. You can pick and choose, obviously. All right, so let's see. So we've got a text field and symmetrical, horizontal. Let's give it 24. So bring those edges in a bit. All right, so we have a search. We have a box. Let's extract this field because we want to put logic in that's particular to this behavior. So
Simon.
I had a separate widget containing text field and overlay widget. I hide and show the widget based if the text field has focus. Yeah, exactly what I'm showing you here. So this is going to give you a good starting point. So now I have a text field. What I want to do is extract this out. So we're going to say, extract widget somewhere. I'm just going to put it down here. So we want a stateful widget, and we're going to call it search field, right? And we'll put that here instead. And constant. Obviously, we could have we could actually have like list tile. Blah one.
The blah one field. Nice.
2, 3. Yeah, those things are always common. He says, but then it broke. That's because it got hashing in. Yeah.
Copilot would have filled those in. It's very spooky.
Right. So we have these things here. Now, when it comes to our field, we want a text field. We want a controller to contain our content. And then when we dispose of our search field, we want to dispose of set controller because we're creating it, we're managing, we own it. It's not the text field, and then we're going to pass it over to the text field. So now we can, with this, we can now access the content of the field. Great. Now, the point here is when this receives focus. Now, I think if I remember right, you can pass a focus node over to it. You can, and then that will automatically be managed for us. So we'll do the same thing up here. We're going to create a final focus node. And again, we're going to dispose of that. Okay, so now the question is, this is great, and now I have a field. I'm going to tap on it, the focus node is going to change, but I'm not doing anything with it. So now we want to do something with it. So when our widget starts up, we want to register against the focus node a listener. And now we can have a void on focus changed.
On focus changed.
Put wherever you want, and then we add that listener. Now, we should, strictly speaking, clean up after. We should also clean up after ourselves. And since we dispose of it, it's not being used, strictly not needed, right? Not strictly needed, but I find it's always nice to clean up after oneself to make sure you don't get any callbacks we didn't mean to or whatever else.
Yep.
So we do this. We're going to remove that listener and then dispose of it.
But
there's no chance of that.
Dispose does remove all the listeners, right?
I know. It's just this. In this case, it does. But I'm just trying to explain to the audience here that when you add something, it has a remove function. You match those up. You don't ever want to like leak stuff because then you get into this fun stuff where you're getting callbacks. We don't mean to get callbacks, and you go, well, why is my thing breaking? So anyway, so so now we get the focus change. We're going to go, is our focus node focused? Has focus, and let's hello, right, with the console, right. Now, for testing purposes, it does lose focus. Oh, great, good. This hopefully means that we're clicking here, hello, click off, we don't see anything, obviously we don't print anything, so now we need the else, goodbye. Again.
You say hello, I say goodbye.
Hello, goodbye. Hello, goodbye. Perfect. This is what we want.
Wow.
Now we have a way of detecting when we want to pop up the suggestions, or even better than this, we could say when it's got the focus and when there's some text in the box, right? And when that text changes, we want to update the search results, for example, right?
Wow.
So in this case, this is now where it gets kind of the next level.
This will be cool.
So we want this callback to be called not just on the focus change, but also when the text changes. So now we do add listener. We'll say on focus changed again, and then again move. Now this function gets called when either instance happens, right?
Mm.
Right. So now we can change this to on focus or text changed. Now, depending on if it gets the focus, and then also if the text has changed, we can do something. So now we can say something like, we want to keep we want to manage our overlay, right? So we're going to need actually what's called an overlay entry. This is just, well, this is basically what goes into the overlay, and I'm going to treat it as nullable, so it's not there. What is an overlay entry is like think of it like a layer in the overlay, right? So if our text changes and we already have an overlay, sorry, if we don't have an overlay, then we want to do something, right? So if one of these two things is true, if our controller, say, text trimmed, so we'll get rid of spaces, is not empty. Actually, we could say if it's not null, then actually we don't want to do anything, meaning that we already have an overlay. It's killing me at this point. Then if it's empty, again, we don't want to do anything. However, if our overlay entry, so if we got to this point, now we know we don't have an overlay entry and we have some text. Now we can say if we don't have focus, so if has focus, sorry, if we do have focus, right, we'll just leave this true, then we want to show our overlay. So in this case, we say overlay of context, insert an overlay entry, call this underscore overlay entry. I know this is null right now. Let's do that. And we're going to set our overlay entry in here to be overlay entry builder. It's going to be a builder function. We'll call this, let's just return a material purple, and then we'll give that a center. It's just to put like on the screen. We'll come back and remove all this in a minute. 100. Right. 100. Commas in there. It failed me because it's error. It's just, I think it's everything wrong.
Overlay is imperative style, right? That's from the chat.
Well, yes, it is imperative. It manages state, right? So you insert and remove things, and it maintains that state. Overlay doesn't actually have a direct children, if I remember rightly. You only give it your initial entries, and then it creates them. It says yes, it's more imperative, but you can react. Your overlay entries can react to your state. Anyway, all right. Cool. So now, too many. Right. All right. So Oops. So I'll restart this, and I click in the box. Nothing happened. What did I do wrong? Did I edit? Did I edit? Okay. Oh, I didn't type in the box, did I? Oh, there you go. So now if I type in the box, boom, there it comes. Perfect. That's exactly right. Exactly as I planned it. Right. So what do we want to do now? So we want this to be a list, and we want to position that list underneath the search box to show the suggestions. Okay. So first of all, we don't want to put this inline. This is really, really horrible, right? So what we want to now do is create another widget down here with search suggestions, right? Search suggestions list. There you go. And I'm just going to take out lovely color box. Stick it down there. That's the first thing to do. Now we can treat our suggestions as an independent thing, right? Okay. And up here in our builder, we can build said suggestions. Right. Now, the suggestions we want to change when the text changes, right? And also, we want to remove the overlay when the text becomes empty, right? So if we switch these around, what we could do here is now say if it's empty, return. We could also now say if it's empty and overlay entry does not equal null, does not equal null, that means we have one. So we should be able to call the remove function on our overlay entry and then set it to null. So this way, this is our first piece of first content change, right? All right. So if I run this, box type, if I backspace, none, it disappears, right? Now we have that standard sort of behavior. All right, so what's next? The next thing we need to do, we want to make sure that let's have this display. First of all, let's just have it display. Let's just put it at 300 for a second here, and then I'm going to make this. Inside this, I want a text which shows query. So now what we can do, if we make this stateful, we could pass in the text controller. There's lots of ways of doing this, but this is the easiest, right? And then we can, in here, wrap this entire thing in a value listable builder, for example, or we don't have to use, I think it's the value listable, if I remember rightly, it's been a while. So let's see what we go. Build context, and then the value is, might be text, I know it's text editing. Stable time, is text editing value, that's not. Value. This is the, you can go look this up, I'm just right. And then we're going to return our material. We're going to flip this around in a second.
I've got to say, I'm always amazed that you seem to be able to just cut out a piece of code, move it someplace else, and you don't have a mismatch parenthesis. How do you do that?
I have mismatch parentheses. I'm sure I do, right? Or not? Maybe I don't. Oh, maybe I don't. I don't know. Right.
No. How do you do that?
Why is this complaining? Because the last
you have skills. You have skills.
So now this value is going to be value.text, right? Okay. So now if I restart this, we broken because I haven't passed the controller in. This is good. This is what we expect. So now we can pass the controller over. Restart. All right. So now we click in the box and I start typing, test, and now you can see it's a bit small, but now whatever I type in the box has been updated in our overlay.
Wow.
Right, and we go to the none, it disappears. So this is a good starting point. All right. Okay,
You didn't test if the overlay goes away when you tap out of the box.
It does not. I specifically
Oh.
if there's a suggestion, it's there. So we could actually do that though, right? So we can say if, let's go back to this and say if our overlay entry is not null and it's empty. So we could just do a separate condition here and say void should show overlay. That's going to be if it's not empty. Yeah, it's not. If it's not empty and the widget has focus, right? Either way around, that's the way it's going to be. And then we can say if we have an overlay entry and we don't want to show anymore, then we should remove that overlay entry. And return. Otherwise, if we don't have an overlay entry, to null, then we want to create one because now we want to show. Because, if it's an overlay entry, it's null. And whoops, crap. Fingers.
Oh,
Where do I go? Down here. Down. Here we go. We're here. Right. I was just actually thinking maybe overlay entry should go in there, but actually that would make it toggle. We don't want to. Okay. If it's null, and we should now show. Perfect. Then let's make our overlay entry and show. Right. So that's. I'm going to return here. Start. Okay, so click in the box, start typing, it's there, click off, it disappears, click on it, it shows, backspace out, it disappears. So that's our logic. All right, and we still got people, and do they still want to learn this stuff? I think we've still got people watching, hopefully. Right,
yeah.
Hopefully I haven't bored everyone to death. Right, so
now plenty of people still watching it, yeah.
Back to our suggestions. So, all right, so there's a bit of magic I'm going to do now that not a lot of people know about. So I hope you're paying attention. Right. Magic. So I'm going to show you a little class that not people know about.
Yes, the chat room says, yes, we're here. So keep going with this, Simon. Keep going with it.
Good. So we have a layer link. So now what we can do is outside of around our text field, we can now wrap this in a, we've got this other names for this, hang on, composite transform target. And this requires a layer link. So we'll give it a layer link. Now, I'm going to show you how cool this is in just a second. But basically, this is all about creating a follower layer and a leader layer. And the idea is a leader layer. It basically means that two different things in the UI that are not part of the same UI subtree can actually move together, basically. It's to do with composition. This is actually how, when you click in a text box here, like if I click in a text box and select some text, on desktop it doesn't do it, but you know the selection handles that you see in a text field on mobile, those are done this way. They're basically set up to follow where the widgets move to. So if you scroll, if this widget went in let's say a list, a scrollable list, then the overlay would follow it as well. If the keyboard pops up, then it follows it. You don't have to calculate the position. This is how you're supposed to do this. Right. Anyway, moving on. So then down here in our pop-up, instead of doing center, we now replace this with composite transform follower, and then this needs the same link layer. So now we can pass it over. And when we build it, we pass that over. So now if I restart this, click, start typing, there we go. Now we get this massive gray box that covers everything right now. This is because we haven't given it any constraints. Okay. So this is the next thing. So down here, by default, it just tries to fill. I don't think target actually has them. It's on the destination. Over here on the destination, we can say follower anchor. And target anchor. So we want the follower anchor to be the top left of the widget, right? And then the anchor of the target is going to be the bottom left. And then we can also put an offset. So if you want to manually move it in some sort of pixel thing, you can do that as well. Right, so now if I click the type, it pops up exactly below the text field. Now, if the text field moves, this layer will also this link layer will also move. All right. So next, our site, because of our constraints, the size box is now become a bit defunct in that sense. It will be forced to pull out. So we actually want to actually do another aligned widget here. And we want to align our content in our whole top area. So now click in the box, start typing, and now we have our 300 by 100 box positioned in the right place. Not the width, but the position in the right place. I don't believe you get the size of the follower from here. So the way we can do that is a little bit mischievous, but I think we can do it. So what we actually need now is we're going to play a bit with the render tree layers. So we could obviously fix the size and do some other things, but actually I want to do this properly. I want this to react to the size of the widget. I mean, we could also say we want this, we could also call this do intrinsic width, and then have it so that as the suggestions get wider, the box gets wider. There's a lot of ways of doing this. This is all completely up to your imagination, as it were. So what we're going to do, I want to bring the width in. So what I'm going to do up here is when I pass this in, obviously I could calculate the width. So what I could do is say width. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you the progression. So we can say width and pass in the width here, right? And then we can add a width parameter.
Down to the final 10 minutes. Let's see if he can pull it off.
I might stay a little bit longer if you don't. If you fully want to head off, just say that.
You just turned a hard deadline into a soft deadline. Okay, I get it.
So it's always that.
It's a hard stop for me, but I'm not doing any coding. So.
So now, yeah, if I put 500 here as my number and then start typing, it's now 500. But if I now resize the widget or make it smaller, it's just going to go off the screen and so on. It's not ideal, right? So this is a state. A state is attached to the element tree, and therefore we can get the render object for this widget, for our widget that contains our text field and composited transform target. So what we can do here is say render box equals context of find render object as render box, and then in here pass in render box size. And since the overlay is always going to, this code is always going to be run once layout has initially passed, this is not going to be 0, it's always going to be set. So when I type, it's always going to be the width of the box. Bing. So there you go. So that makes the width of the box. However, again, if I resize, it does not resize with our layout. So that's something else that we want to do. So what we could also do now is pass. Now this is about using closures now. So this is hopefully an expression of what we were talking about earlier. Okay. So to solve this problem, we can now make width a function that returns an integer, right? So now width is a function that returns an integer. Down here, when we do layout, we can now call it as a function, right? And actually want to return double. My bad. Let's just fix that. Okay. And then we also want to make sure that when layout occurs here, when the other widget changes, and we'll sort that one out. There's a couple of different ways of doing that. I have to think about that one. But for right now, this means that if the layout builder is called, we could have if the layout is rebuilt. Yeah, if the layout is rebuilt, it will get a new width. So let's just try that here and see how we go. So now we can actually do this, and that's it. We just pass a closure, and now it's always going to do that. Now we can also now just extend this a little bit more and say context is mounted. Now we don't actually have to look up before we call this, and that's actually slightly better. So we'll pop it in here and say if the context is mounted, then we want to look up the render box because it's part of the UI and return back size 0 as a default value. So we could escape early and say if context mounted false. 0. Right. So now at the top, it says, what happened? What did I do? It blew up at me. Null? Oh. Why is... Oh, I know why. I know exactly what's happening. Okay, I moved it inside, but context is being overridden here by builder. So this is actually the builder context. We don't want the builder context. We want our widget context. So we'll just rename this to builder context. That way, this context is actually the one from the state and not the one from the builder.
Wow.
Okay. All right, open the box.
Thus proving that context at every level is really a different value. You can't just steal one and put it somewhere else, unlike that package that we keep talking about occasionally. Yes.
So now I make it smaller, I type in the box. I make it bigger, I type in the box. And then I that's where that changes. There we go. And then we're basically, at the moment, whenever build gets called, it gets the new value, which is nice. But again, it's not reactive in any way. We need to be able to register for when the layout changes. There is actually that's a good point. So the answer to this is we could
hook into media query. No, don't do that.
Could you do a layout builder?
Well, I was actually thinking that. So it's not really that. I mean, like basically we can update a field and we can update our so this width, instead of passing this in, the way I was thinking about this is we just extend this with a there's a multitude of ways of doing this, but I don't want to go down to the details of the render object tree and anything to do with that. I want to kind of keep this simple. Can we do that in update widget? Good question. And so the thing is, these widgets are not getting rebuilt, not getting updated. We don't want them to, right? The idea is that the overlay is separate from the other one, so definitely not did update of the overlay. Basically, what we're trying to do is tell the.
Simon, I was going to say I can't wait to see how you end up doing this, but I've got to go. Thank you.
Yeah, if you have to head off, as I said. Yeah, don't worry. Well,
thanks.
Watch this feedback. We'll see how we solved it.
Yes.
All right. So did update widget. So let's have a think about this. The way I see this is that we actually just want to notify the search suggestions that the size has changed, and that will update it. Right. That's just the easiest way to do this. and the most direct way, and it's super simple. So let's just do that, right? Let's just not make things more complicated, right? So all we need to do is say width is a value notifier, the value type double, and it starts off at 0. And then
and then update the width.
Yeah, and then down here we can, instead of passing in a function this time, we pass in a value notifier of double.
Yeah, that's it. Do that. Ship it.
Ship it. And now again we could do a value, do another value listenable builder. Why not? It doesn't come without width right now, and then yeah, let's just drop it in there. Size box without width and height. And then this value is double. And then yeah. Right. So basically, we just wrapped it up, right? So that just use media create. No, do not just use media create anywhere. There you go. Is the answer to that one. We've said this before. If you listen to if you use media query directly, it will rebuild your widget on any change to media query. This is particularly apparent on desktop when you size a window. On every pixel change of your resize, basically, it's going to rebuild all your widgets, which is not what we need. We just need to change the, you're making it, it may seem simple, you actually make it more difficult. So
right.
Here we are. So now we've done that. Now we have the widget size box down here listening to this value notify list. And now we just notify when the value changes. Well, funny enough, we can do it during build. Here we can say
there's another reason to not use media query for this. And media query is about the width of the screen. It's not necessarily about the width of the box we're trying to follow, because we're trying to follow a particular box that's laid out a particular way. What if there's something next to it that causes it to relay out so it's different size? We want to trigger on that. We don't want to trigger on the width of the screen changing.
Cool, Randall.
I presume you were going to say something like that. I just forgot to.
I also I'm trying to think about doing this.
yeah, exactly. Just trying to help you out there.
Yeah. Do that for now. To be honest, we probably want to be honest, this is probably constraints.has constraints has bounded width. Well, it's just the width constraints there. Has bounded width. And otherwise we'll return back maybe a default value. That way, if it's put in infinite size, it just doesn't just crash out with like double dot infinity. In fact, you know what? I think leaving this double dot infinity is still going to work, and it'll stretch it out, and that'll be fine. Right, but anyway, moving back, right? Whatever. So now that's just all the management of getting our lovely overlay. So let's go back. Restart error. I have got an error in my code somewhere. Let's see. I forgot to pass something somewhere. Did I? Yes. No.
There's almost no problem. There's almost no problem in layout that can't be solved by adding layout builder.
It just use a layout. It doesn't play well with intrinsics. Just FYI.
No.
Right. So restart.
If it's any harder than that, you got to use Boxy. Boxy is also really a handy universal tool.
You know what? I know exactly what happened here.
What'd you do?
So I'm not even going to bother reading this, but basically we're calling build through build, which is never a good thing. So basically down here, when you set the value of a value listable, this calls notify listeners, which literally loops around all those functions and calls them. So if we look at what we do, this does that, and then that is being listened to by this widget. That calls build to build the UI. So we got build calling build, which never works. And the easiest fix in the whole wide world for this, which I'm going to show you the largest cheat code in Flutter. Largest cheat code in Flutter.
Oh no.
No. This is the correct way of doing it. Down here,
Okay.
we take this and we say schedule microtask. Drop it in there like that. And we can actually make an expression. Just schedule microtask. Right. So now what this is doing is saying, don't execute this line right now. Execute it in the next part of the main task loop, right? So basically, after build has finished, after this entire build that we're in right now is finished, it's going to run this function. And then that's going to cause another build to happen, right? So hopefully we clear our log, continue, because it's previously continue, clear and restart. Okay, so no errors. That's a good sign. And we tap in our box. No errors. Good. And now we resize. Yay! It's changing.
Wow.
It's amazing. A box that changes size.
We could build a thing called a browser with this. All right.
This ID is JetBrains, but it looks like it has a theme applied. This is JetBrains IntelliJ. It does not have a theme. This is called is part of the new UI system in JetBrains. I mentioned it earlier. Go into your appearance and behavior latest version, new UI beta, tick the box, and you get this. There you go. I've also the sizes are all messed up because I had to make it bigger for the stream. Right. Okay. So let's we want this to let's set some goals here, right? Because we got this is obviously the basic thing. The thing that trainer thought was asking for was like to update. Was it to update? I mean, is this it, or is there we know it's like update? Well, let's show update search results. Let's show how you do that, right? It will take 2 seconds to add, and I'll post this as like search box, search suggestions, right? So we'll create a little class up here. What do we want to search? We've got a function that returns a list of string for now. Obviously, you can do like a search result model object or something. We say perform search, right? It's going to take a query. And let's have let's do something like this. Let's do names. We want some names that have some overlap as well. So we have Simon, Steve, Randall, and
Scott.
No, I want to say that overlaps DAL or something. So Dalan, you got Dalan now. And then who else have we got in this? Who else have we got in the chat?
Delhi. No, okay.
Oh, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And train. Let's put train. Train of thought. There you go. You get into the stream. There you go. Right. So we have our names. Wow. Yeah. So perform search. What we're going to do is say return. Let's say results. Let's just do this. So we can do this with map right now. Right? I'm just trying to give an example. So for name in names, if name lowercase contains query dot to lowercase results. Nice and simple. Return results. Obviously, better ways of doing this. There's stop words. There's all sorts of other things to do with searching. Go look them up. But that's just a basic little search example. And then when we create our home screen or I create our app, we could then say find like the search manager and create one instance of this hash state or something, right? And then home screen, so we have search manager. Let's make another widget here. app, search app, search. Let's do it state actually. There, typing too quickly. Right. So we have our search app. Let's put our material app in there. Search app. Search app itself. Main search app itself. In this case, is going to create a search initializes, and then we're going to do a not do a constant, but I want a search app state. So why are you using value schedule micro layout builder? Could we not use directly use layout builder? No, you can't. So the layout builder, so remember that the overlay is separate to the UI tree of the box, right? Meaning that when the layout of the box changes, it doesn't change the layout of the state of the overlay. So there's no, if I put layout builder in the overlay, great, it will get built when that builds, but it won't get built when the search box changes and vice versa, right?
Yep.
That's why.
Cool. Thanks.
So we'll do look, this is just a little trick here. Static build. Return.
Yeah, that's the thing. The overlay is really in a separate part of the tree, so you can't really have notifications go up and down except through things like value notifiers and Riverpod.
Exactly. Like that. Take out the tree, yeah.
Yep.
And then as that should work. Just make sure it works. Right. So now we go down. So basically, what I've done here is I've just put in this search app state. In the search app state, we've got the search instance of search manager, and now we've got that accessible to us using this of method. This is a bit lame. It has to go up the tree always. It doesn't cache. You should use an inherited widget. I just don't want to bother with that. We use provider, or use Riverpod, or pick whatever state management you want. This is just a cheap way of doing state management. That's just like good for example. So, so now what we want to do is access that search manager and call the function. So what we're going to do is scroll down to our search suggestions. And then when this starts up, we're going to have a future list string results. And it's late, and then when we initialize, we're going to go up the tree and find that. Now, there's again, because ancestor state type does not use inherited widget, we can actually do that in init state. Otherwise, you want to use did change dependencies, and that's where you want to put this. So let's say, oh, I missed a bracket there. So let's say we want to set this here. So basically, the initial search is going to be what we're given. So we'll say we'll just perform the search here. So in fact, let's get search manager and cache it. So it's accessible because we're always going to need it in the search suggestion box. So late search manager. Assume we have one instance and it doesn't change. That'd be reasonable for this use case. Of context search manager. I made it static, but I always search app of context search manager. So we're getting our global search manager anywhere in the tree, in this case in here. And after we get that, we want our initial set of results to be search manager dot perform search query, which is going to be widget dot controller dot text, and we always trim the text. This gets rid of leaving spaces. This is quite important because when you type on a mobile keyboard, especially on a mobile phone, it adds spaces at the very end of everything you type. And if you don't trim them, people's usernames from username boxes will have a space always at the end. It's very annoying. But the idea of that is that they can continue typing. It's a lot easier to work with the keyboard. So yeah, be cautious of that. It can trip you up. Okay, so now down here, we want to perform, we can actually do this as a stream, I think. What's the best way of doing this? Okay, so let me explain what we're trying to do, and then I'll explain the way I'm thinking of achieving it. Okay, so we want to take the controller, listen to changes from the controller, convert those into a stream of events that pass through our perform search and they get displayed on the UI. Right? Now, there's a ton of different ways of doing this, right? A ton of different ways, and I don't want to use any libraries because I want to keep it simple. So we're just going to do it the plain old simple way, okay? And that is we listen to it. So here, what we can say is add listener. I'm going to say on text changed, right? And then just like before, we do dispose. We want to widget controller. Move listener. Changed. And when that text change occurs, we want to get the text from the controller. That's the first priority. So controller trim. And then we want to set the state of our UI so it rebuilds. Again, there's other ways of doing this. This will do fine just for what we want. And then we want to do our future this updates our results feature. I removed it from there because I just realized what I can actually do is call so after this builds, it will call this, which will take the text and set the state and update the results feature. In fact, it might be able to get away with not actually doing that at all. Who set state from its state? We'll find out. Right, so let's see now. So we don't want to listen to the text down here. Instead, what we want to do is have a feature builder. And said feature builder is going to listen to our results. Feature results. And that's going to return back a list string. Snapshot. And we can say if our because
Simon, there was this question earlier, and it also applies here. Why do you put the type specifically in the callback?
So I always I always find this nice, especially when it comes to refactoring. When you leave no types and you do refactoring, you can get into a situation where you're passing the wrong type through and not realizing it, and then you get runtime errors. Very similar to, because essentially it's dynamic at that point, right? If you put the type in, you're forcing now. Here's the example case here. Let's say suddenly I change my search to return back a list of ints or something, right? Then what's going to happen is I'm going to get an error. Forget that, obviously, maybe I'll fix that. Now I'm going to get an error on my UI. You forgot to change your UI. If I did not do this and not specify the type, it's going to just treat it as okay because it matches, right? So it's always good to be slightly more specific when you're especially when you deal with generic typing, than not, basically. And it also is quite nice when I go to navigate my UI. When I navigate my IDE. I find it's nice to have the type so you can just like command click and go to the type information and look up documentation. As soon as you don't have that type, if I had context here, I'm going to have to go find a context. I can't command click on the variable because it's a variable, right? It's not type. So I find it a lot easier to have the types there for my navigation of code as well.
I presume IntelliJ can do the same thing that VS Code can do, though. There is a right-click pop-up that says go to type definition.
No.
Wherever it says go to definition, you don't have a go to definition button, and can you just
find usages?
No.
Analyze.
Might be an analyze there. Well, wherever you do to click and go to the definition. So where do you click?
Command click. Just command click. That's it. Just
right, but there's a right click menu that also has that go to definition in VS Code. I don't know if that's the same thing in IntelliJ, but yeah, doesn't matter.
Well,
doesn't matter.
No, I'm kind of curious, right? Someone just said so there was a go to.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
VS
a
Code.
Go to. Oh, look, hang on. Go to type
definition.
No, so if I delete that and say, maybe I could actually set up a hotkey. That might be fun. Implementation, declaration of uses.
Type. No, it's something about going to the type definition, not declaration.
Well, I did. I mean,
yeah. It might be different in IntelliJ then, but I know that VS Code can do that.
I think it's because that's what control click does. Like it's already inbuilt. So
no, it can be pulled up. Well, it in VS Code it is set up so that if you're actually on the thing and you click on it, you get to go to the usages. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it is set up differently. I don't know. I can't remember the buttons I press. I'll only remember that I have to go down to the right-click menu to figure out what my type definition is. Don't worry. Move on.
It's a shame.
Didn't mean to just.
No, I was kind of curious myself.
We can solve this one afterwards.
There's always time for learning. Right. Snapshot dot. So we now look at the connection state to say, is it still processing that connection? So we say if it's not done, right? If it's not got any data, then fine enough, we're loading, so we show a spinner. Or we can say and snapshot dot data. Because as soon as we have data, we want to display it. Right. So if you start typing again, it doesn't matter that we get a new feature. We don't want to show a progress bar again. We could decide to change that in the future, but I think let's do it without that, and then I'll show you what the problem is. I'll show you how we fix it. All right. So now we want to return back a column to the child scroll view because we're now height here. Now we can change all the height. I'm not going to go into just the width. There's actually ways of doing intrinsic height as well. And if you do intrinsic height or wrap it against the bottom of the screen, you could also do a limited box with intrinsic height and have it so that it reaches a certain size. It doesn't go further. Anyway.
And so, Simon, there was this question earlier that we didn't get to, but it was about when you were doing the microtask. Is this the same as microtask?
Actually, there's a very subtle difference. And the point here is add post-frame callback is saying when the next frame finishes, call the callback. Now, that's fine if there's another frame coming. So just because a build happens or just because something happens doesn't mean like it's frame scheduled. There's actually a slight difference. What's it called? There's another callback as well inside of widget bindings, which is similar, that guarantees a callback. I can't remember which way it is. But yes, in short, it is like that. But if you don't require anything to be painted on the screen, well, then don't wait for it to be painted. Call build again. So it's only after the build part of the loop is finished that it runs.
And there's that excellent talk from, I forget who it was on the Google team at Flutter Vikings about all these various life cycle steps. I think you know the one I'm talking about.
I haven't watched any Vikings talks.
I'll see if I can find it. But it was,
I'm quite interested.
I loved it because it was so. It went into this very question and this sort of thing of what all these microtasks are and how they synchronize.
Control B. What does Control B do to me? Build. No, that doesn't work for me. Very different hotkey. So, Rowan said it's Craig. Life cycle of a widget, Craig. Oh yeah, I know the life cycle of a widget. It's probably not right to this, but anyway.
Yeah.
Right, moving on.
It.
Oh god, what have I done? Oh, that did like Kotlin build or some shit on me. Anyway, let's make
Thanks, Roy.
Let's carry on with what we're doing. Right, so tile.
Yes.
We want a list tile, and we want its title to be the text for this item, and we're going to have multiples of these. So we're going to take for final result. Results, and results is snapshot. Okay, and then when we tap it, we have it print the result to which one we tapped on. We have it close the pop-up and return a value on whatever it was. Okay, so we've got results. It does this. This all looks good. Restart. Did that work? I can't tell because this stupid thing. Project errors. Oh, wonderful. I think that's just junk. I don't think this is like because it tried to compile Kotlin. I think we're good. Let's ignore that. Let's pretend it doesn't exist. Right. Right, restart. Yeah, that worked. Okay, cool. So let's type in RA. Oh, it blew up. What did we do wrong? This will be that thing I said about. Yeah, this will be in me calling set state.
Yeah, can you get away with this? And you didn't.
I know. Wait. You introduced a material widget that can either use one directly. Okay, so I know exactly what this is. So no material widget found. So it's going up the tree. So list tile trying to go up the tree to find a material widget, and it doesn't find it. That's because we don't have one, probably. So this is all about
material somewhere, but I don't remember.
No, I think I removed it. Let's go back. Yeah, there's no material anymore. Yep. So size box, and then we want a material above this. So we want it because at the moment it's transparent. So yeah, we already want that when we got the loading spinner. So let's wrap this in the material, and we can give it a type. I think I don't know. We give it an elevation of 8 as well. Probably not what we want, but we'll find out.
Let me put on my 3D glasses. No.
Right. Click. Start typing. R A A N. Okay. Something went wrong because we're getting all the results.
They all match.
Also, again, that horrible flickering, which is what we would solve by not rebuilding the UI. But let's see how we solve this. So, okay. So first of all, results, perform search. If name lowercase contains query to lowercase. Let's see what we're. Oh, did we? No, we give the right query. Let's print it. Let's see what happens. Print. Oh wait. Hang on. I'm returning names, not results. I'll do it.
Yes.
I'll do it. Right. Oh, there you go. Random train of thought.
Select ones from universe and then return universe.
Yeah, so that's
great.
Right?
Look at that.
So
it's very tiny on my screen. It's very tiny on my screen, but I think I know what's going on.
We're gonna do something. Is this a good idea?
It's bottom of the hour.
It's gonna be the good idea. Transform.scale.
Can you do it in 5 more minutes?
Let's scale it 400%.
Oh yeah, transform. Transformers.
That was not a good idea because it's centering. It's going to need alignment as well. Let's see if this does what I expect it to do. Yay! There you go. Now
Biggies.
So yeah, it's going to be off the screen.
Yes.
We transform the paint, but hopefully there you go. So that's easier to see. So SRAN. Right. So it's flickering right now because it's performing the result again and rebuilding the UI because it always goes back to the loading state. So what we want to do down here is we just say if it's not done and snapshot dot does not have data, right? So it does not have, say equals false. So now if I restart and we try this again, RAND, it doesn't flash anymore because it's not going to the load spinner, but it still does it. And then there's actually a slightly better way of doing this where we cancel the previous future. I'm not going to go into that, but you can actually have it so it cancel the previous future and create a new future. That way you only listen to the latest result and you don't like stack up results. That's only if things run quite slowly. This is obviously quite quick. What else do I want to say? Oh yeah, the height. Let's just quickly just wrap this in a intrinsic. Can we do this? We're going to find out if we can do this today on time. Right. Intrinsic.
All you do is blow up.
Exactly, right? So we're going to wrap this material card in intrinsic height. And then we get rid of our height here.
And you'll put this code in a gist so we can publish it?
Yeah, I will put this in a gist. There we go. Look. S Simon Steve, SI gets 1.
Oh, 2, wonderful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And then we can also put RA and
look at that.
Then we tap on that, we're going to get
nothing.
I just realized what's actually happening there.
It's defocusing, right? So it
kills yeah. Yeah. So there is actually a way of handling this, and that is we use focus scope node. But I think we've done enough here. It's more visible. So I like when you're reading the code, it's quite a lot more visible than exclamation mark especially for beginners. I honestly, it depends on the situation. But if it's on the beginning of if it's on the beginning of an if statement, it's on its own, I'd leave it with the not, because it's kind of obvious. But again, it's just coding style. They're both exactly the same. I think for explicit false it's exactly the same. Compars exactly the same. It just feels a lot cleaner some of the time, and it's more expressive than in your intent. Where true is the obvious one. If this thing, then it's true if it's a boolean, right? So I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes it can be helpful. It's exactly the same code. All right. So hopefully, I'm gonna put our scale back to 1, and then I'll put a little note next to it saying, "Make embiggen."
Yeah, embiggen. Yes, my favorite word. Enhance.
So that will
enhance,
right? So yeah, and we can also do interesting enough. I know we don't display anything right now, but you could also do have it say not found, no results, right? You can just easily. I'm just going to quickly do that down here since we've got it here. So it has data, but it's empty, right? So what we could say is if results.length is 0 or is empty actually. Right? Oh no curly braces. Here we go. We could say list tile.
The text of empty.
Text. No results found. And color text as theme of context.
Is it going to show that at the beginning, or is it only going to show it after there are some characters in the string?
Error color has been deprecated.
Uh-oh.
Color scheme error. Okay, I'll do that. Thanks, Google. Right. So now I type, and we get. Oh, I thought it was going to color the text. I thought it was tile color. The text. Well, that's not good. Let's just put that in the text.
Text color. Text style. Text color.
Styles.
Yep.
Right. Try that again. So,
That's less obnoxious. Yeah.
So,
Nice.
half of me wants to deal with this like clicking thing right now, but I think we've been going long enough. So if we could, if people want it interested, we could extend this more next time. But basically, yeah, when it loses focus, the way it works is you put the tiles that are inside the pop-up inside the focus tree of the text field. Therefore, the text field stays focused as a parent of the tile. So when the tiles get the focus, it still has the focus. And that's the solution to that. I'm not going to do it right now because I think everyone's had enough.
Why don't you make a gist of this, and I'll talk just for a second about if you're not participating in the Flutter Forward 17 Days of Flutter, please start, because it's already started 2 days into it already. So you're behind. So go check that out while Simon makes a gist of what he just did.
Flutter Forward, yeah.
Flutter Forward, yes, coming soon. 2 weeks from today. So yay. And Simon's making a gist. Simon, can you publish your gist address?
I will do that momentarily.
All right. And thanks everyone for stopping by and sticking with us all the way to the end. That's great. Be sure to tell your friends. Check in next week and the week after that and the week after that and the week after that. We're going to keep doing this as long as they let us. Well, I'll try to anyway.
It's
give up. I don't know.
It's always the way when you what's it? Brain. No, it's gone. Whatever I was going to say. Brain said no. Right. Let's. How do we do a new gist? Where's that button? New gist. Somewhere here. Paste. Main.dart. Which would say sample. Example of overlays with search suggestions. Bring Q&A. January 3. Create a public gisto. And yeah, okay, pop it in the chat for everyone. If you watch the stream, hopefully you stay to the very end so you get the link.
Yes.
Do you want to stick on the screen?
Awesome.
Oh, that's not it. Oh no, I lost it. Hang on.
It was there.
There we go. Then for the people, it's a really long link. Sorry. There you go. Good luck.
For people that can read the screen really fastly and type in the code.
Yeah, it's in the chat. You can find it in the chat.
It's in the chat.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us.
Simon, it's
we would try to be. I still got to get flights and everything.
Simon, it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks.
I know. As we said 2 weeks. I'm like, oh god. No.
I'm not going. I'll be in my underground bunker on that morning. That's all. I know I'll be here. All right.
Right. All right. Well, we'll see you again in another week. Ciao, everyone.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
Oh, I pressed the wrong button. That's not good.